Hey everyone, and welcome back to AIPIP. You know, we always love to do a deep dive into something that's really got people talking, and today we're looking at something that, well, honestly, it feels like it's ripped right from the headlines. But it's actually making waves on the big screen. We're talking about The Apprentice, a film all about Donald Trump's early days.
And it is not your typical biopic.
No, not at all.
I mean, this movie is generating some serious buzz, from premiering at Cohn to a cease and desist letter from Trump himself, and now Oscar nominations for the actors Sebastian Stan and Jeremy Strong.
Yeah, it's wild.
Really wild.
So Sebastian Stan, of course, is playing Trump, and Jeremy Strong is playing his notorious mentor, Roy Cohn. So for those who might not be familiar with Cohn, he was a very powerful lawyer with a pretty controversial history, to say the least. I mean, he played key roles in everything from the McCarthy hearings to the Studio 54 scene.
Oh, yeah. He was everywhere.
And he became Trump's mentor back in the 70s. And kind of taught him a lot of what shaped his approach to business and, honestly, life.
Yeah, and the film really digs into that whole mentorship thing, you know, showing how their personalities and ambitions were, like, intertwined, almost like this dark, twisted reflection of each other.
It's really interesting.
It makes you wonder, did Cohn, like, create a monster? Or did he just see the potential for one?
Right. And that's the question that's been kind of haunting me ever since I first heard about this movie. But what I find so fascinating is how the actors Stan and Strong have talked about this journey that the film has been on. Like, imagine premiering at Cohn and then suddenly dealing with legal threats and then distribution hurdles and finally Oscar recognition.
Talk about a wild ride. Like, it's almost like the film itself is mirroring the chaotic energy of the very people that it depicts.
Exactly.
The actors have even described it as a whiplash experience.
Why, wow.
Which, knowing Trump and Cohn's history, feels incredibly fitting.
It does. It does. And you know what else is interesting is audiences haven't just been passively watching this.
Oh, no.
They've been having some pretty strong reactions.
Visceral reactions.
Yeah. Stan even mentioned that it's like stirring up conversations and prompting people to kind of confront these buried feelings. But everything surrounding Trump and his legacy. It's like the film is acting as this cultural mirror, reflecting back all this complicated emotional baggage we have as a society.
That definitely taps into that, the desire we all have for those aha moments, those sudden realizations that can kind of shift our perspective a little bit.
Totally.
And speaking of perspective, Jeremy Strong, who plays Roy Cohn, offers a really intriguing one. He sees the film not so much as a political attack, but more as a character study.
Interesting.
He even went so far as to call it a love story, like Midnight Cowboy, focusing on those really intricate dynamics between Trump and Cohn.
A love story.
Yeah.
That's not what I was expecting. But it is a unique take, and it makes you think, right, maybe to truly understand figures like Trump and Cohn, we need to go beyond just like the surface level judgments and really delve into the complexities of their relationship, their motivations, their vulnerabilities even. It's like peeling back the layers of an onion, and you just never know what you're going to find. If you're digging this conversation as much as we are, hit that like button and subscribe to hear the rest of this deep dive.
That's right, because that's what makes this film so compelling. It challenges our assumptions and forces us to grapple with some uncomfortable questions.
It really does.
And that brings us to another one of Strong's observations that really stuck with me. He talked about how Roy Cohn's influence, it doesn't just stay in the past. It's like this long shadow stretching right into our present.
It really makes you think, huh?
Right. He draws these parallels between Cohn's tactics and events that have unfolded in recent years. He even brought up Trump's reaction to Bishop Bood, who was openly critical of Trump back in 2019. That whole situation, it felt very Cohn-esque, the way truth was manipulated, how attacks were launched to discredit anyone who disagreed.
Yeah, you're right. Bishop Bood was the Episcopal Bishop of Washington, D.C., and he publicly condemned Trump's photo op at St. John's Church during the Black Lives Matter protests, and the backlash was swift and brutal, with Trump and his supporters using those familiar tactics, distortion, deflection, and personal attacks to try and silence the criticism.
Exactly. And Strong goes even further, connecting Cohn's legacy to the Capitol riot. It's a chilling thought, but he even said, "When I watched the inauguration, I just thought of him hovering over the Capitol Rotunda."
Wow, that image is powerful, and honestly a bit disturbing. It makes you wonder, are we still living in Roy Cohn's America? A place where power trumps truth, where intimidation silences dissent, and where winning no matter the cost is the only thing that matters.
It's a sobering thought, isn't it? And Strong's take on the film itself adds another layer of unease. He actually described how, in light of recent events, The Apprentice has almost become a horror movie for him.
A horror movie. That's giving me chills. I mean, it's one thing to watch a historical drama, but to see it as a reflection of our current reality,
Ugh.
that's next level unsettling.
Right. And he links that feeling back to one of Cohn's most chilling philosophies, that America is a nation ruled by men, not laws.
Now, that's a statement that could spark an entire debate on its own. But thinking about it in the context of the film, it really highlights the danger of unchecked ambition and the corrosive effect it can have on institutions and, well, on truth itself. It's like that quote, Strong pulled from the movie, everything's just turning into spaghetti.
That quote really stayed with me, too. It captures this feeling of confusion and instability, the sense that reality itself is becoming increasingly malleable, almost impossible to grasp. And that's what makes this whole conversation so relevant, so important. We're living in a time where information is constantly bombarding us, and it can be so hard to sift through it all, to determine what's real, what's spin, and what's outright manipulation.
It's like we're all swimming in a sea of information, trying to stay afloat while waves of misinformation and disinformation crash all around us.
Exactly. And that's why it's so crucial to be critical thinkers, to question our sources, to consider different perspectives, and to be willing to challenge our own assumptions. This film, in a way, serves as a cautionary tale, a reminder of what can happen when truth is treated as something fluid, something to be molded and manipulated for personal gain.
Right.
It's about recognizing the power of narrative, understanding how it can be used to shape our perceptions of reality, and ultimately how it can be weaponized to serve certain agendas.
It's like they say knowledge is power. And the more we understand how narratives are constructed, how they're disseminated, and how they ultimately influence our beliefs and behaviors, the better equipped we'll be to navigate this complex world. Speaking of navigating this complex world, if you're finding this conversation helpful, give us a like and subscribe to the channel. It helps us reach more people and continue these important discussions. But back to The Apprentice. I think what makes this film even more fascinating is how the actors approached their roles. They weren't just playing characters. They were diving headfirst into the psychological depths of these larger-than-life figures.
Oh, absolutely. Their preparation was intense. Strong talked about completely immersing himself in Cohn's world, trying to understand his motivations, his insecurities, his demons even.
And Stan had a similar process. He mentioned needing to isolate himself to build the confidence, to portray someone as well, let's say unique as Donald Trump. It seems like they both went through a real transformation, not just physically, but mentally and emotionally as well.
Yeah, it's like they had to walk a tightrope between embodying these figures authentically and maintaining their own sense of self. Strong described their collaboration as tandem unicycling on a tightrope over an abyss. I mean, talk about a visual.
That's an image that definitely sticks with you.
Yeah.
And it speaks to the level of risk they were taking, both as actors and you could argue on a personal level. To delve so deeply into the minds of such controversial figures, that takes a certain level of courage and commitment. Makes you wonder what was going through their minds as they watched this whole Trump saga unfold in real life. Did they feel any validation that they captured something true about him? Or maybe even a sense of dread seeing their art imitate life in such a disturbing way?
Yeah, it's hard to imagine what that experience must have been like for them. But there is a bit of humor sprinkled in their reflections. Stan talked about sending the film off to college, almost like a parent letting go of their child.
Letting go.
And then Strong, with his, trademark dry wit, compared it to Rosemary's Baby.
That one made me laugh. I mean, it's a dark comparison,
Yeah.
but there's a certain truth to it, right?
Yeah.
This thing they created has taken on a life of its own,
Yeah.
and who knows what impact it'll ultimately have.
Yeah, it's out there now, for better or for worse. But speaking of impact, I think one of the most significant aspects of this film is how it forces us to confront the idea of self-deception, both on a personal and a societal level.
For sure.
Trump and Cohn, in many ways, were masters of creating their own realities, ignoring any facts or evidence that didn't fit their narrative.
And that's something we see all around us today, isn't it? People retreating into echo chambers, clinging to beliefs that are demonstrably false, even when presented with tons of evidence to the contrary. It's like we're living in this post-truth world where facts are malleable, opinions are king, and objective reality is up for grabs.
It's a scary thought, and it makes you wonder, how do we combat that? How do we as individuals and as a society ground ourselves in something resembling truth when everything feels so slippery and uncertain?
That's a tough question, and I don't pretend to have all the answers. But I think a good starting point is being willing to question our own assumptions, to be open to perspectives that challenge our own, and to be skeptical of information that confirms our biases. It's about recognizing that truth is often complex and messy, rarely black and white, and that seeking it out requires effort, humility, and a willingness to be wrong.
Absolutely. It's about cultivating a healthy skepticism, not just of the information we encounter, but also of our own instincts and biases. And it's about recognizing that truth is often a process of discovery, not a destination.
It's about being lifelong learners, always seeking new information, engaging in thoughtful dialogue, and being open to changing our minds when presented with compelling evidence. And that's something we try to encourage here at AIPLP. We want to spark your curiosity, challenge your thinking, and provide you with diverse perspectives to help you navigate this complex world.
And in a world where information is weaponized and truth is often distorted for political gain, I think that's more important now than ever.
Well said. And The Apprentice, in all its unsettling brilliance, serves as a potent reminder of what's at stake. It's a call to action, urging us to be more discerning consumers of information, to engage in critical thinking, and to demand accountability from those in power. It's about recognizing that truth matters, that facts have weight, and that our shared reality is something worth fighting for.
And that, my friends, is why we do this show. We believe in the power of conversation, the importance of critical thinking, and the need to engage with complex issues even when they're uncomfortable, because ultimately the future of our democracy depends on an informed and engaged citizenry.
So if you're looking for a film that will challenge your assumptions, spark some lively debates, and leave you pondering the state of our world, I highly recommend checking out The Apprentice. It's a thought-provoking and timely piece of art that might just leave you wondering, are we still living in Roy Cohn's America?
That's a question we all need to ask ourselves. And if you're interested in exploring more thought-provoking topics and diving deeper into the cultural landscape, don't forget to like and subscribe to AIPRP. We'll be back with more deep dives soon. Thanks for listening.